Hello, this is MrChabry, and no team is complete without flying types. So we're going to be looking at the flying types that are available in Pokemon Black and White. And of course, if you're wanting to play along with me, pick out a flying type because it helps you fly around the map once you get that HM. An early candidate for flying type is Unfezant, and you get this thing pretty early on. Once it's in its final form, it will have a 105 attack and 93 speed, which are decent. There's quite a few things that can outspeed you and would actually do better in the attack stat range. This is decent early on, but I would say as soon as you're able to, I would swap this thing out. The next Pokemon that we need to look at is going to be Swoobat. This Pokemon is a flying type that also has Psychic type. That's actually a pretty cool type combination. However, its stats are pretty middling. It's got a nice 114 speed stat, but other than that, it's not really packing much. Special attack is at 77, which is not the best. You're going to have other choices that are way better than this. And not only that, there's going to be another flying psychic type that we're going to look at, named Sigalith. Sigalith is honestly the better psychic flying type out of these two. This thing might not be as fast, but it has better attack and it has better defenses. 103 special attack means it's actually going to be able to do damage to things that Swoobat would struggle against. And it has 80 defense, which means it's going to be able to survive hits even better than Swoobat. So if you had to choose a psychic type that's going to be your flying type, Sigalith outclasses Swoobat. Next up is Archeops, and this is actually an amazing flying type Pokemon. It has 140 attack. It's going to be hitting things very hard, and at 110 speed, you're going to be outspeeding quite a few things. It also packs a 112 special attack, which is pretty decent on its own, but if you use this thing, you want to use it for that attack stat. It also has the rock typing, which gives you some pretty neat stab. The main problem with this Pokemon is it's not that bulky. It's pretty frail. It's got 65 defenses and 75 HP. And its ability is terrible. Its ability is called Defeatus. So if its HP is brought down to 50%, it cuts back on its attack stat. So this thing is not really good if you let it get worn down. But if you're running this thing, you're wanting to hit things as hard as you can, as quick as possible. If you're needing a flying type that's also a water type, Swanna would be an interesting choice. This thing has good attack and good special attack at 87, and 98 speed is pretty decent as well. However, it's not going to be the best, but typing-wise, here in the 5th generation, it does have a unique typing. So if you're needing a water type, this could be your choice. And speaking of unique typings, electric flying is a pretty cool typing to have. This thing, Emolga, has 103 speed, which makes it pretty fast. However, its attack and special attack are pretty middling at 75, and it's not very bulky at all. So if you use this thing, it's going to be more used as a support Pokemon, where you can set up Tailwind, Encore, maybe even Taunt and U-Turn to get out of there. It's not really going to be really good to use as an in-game team Pokemon, but you might get some support out of it. In terms of flying type, Braviary is actually one of the best. Has a 123 attack, which is amazing, 100 HP, and 75 defense, 75 special defense. Makes it pretty decently bulky. 80 speed is pretty decent as well. This thing hits really hard, plus if you're using Defiant, it's going to boost up its attack whenever someone tries to intimidate this thing. This thing is a great choice, but it is a later Pokemon that you don't get until way later in the game. So that's kind of the drawback here. But if you're willing to level this thing up, it could help you out. Now looking at Mandibuzz, this thing is actually pretty decent as well. It's very bulky. It's got 110 HP, 105 defense, and 95 special defense. And it's got decent speed at 80 as well. However, it doesn't have good attack or special attack, but where it lacks in that, it can make up with the move Foul Play. So if you use this thing, you want to make it as bulky as possible and rely on that foul play because you're going to be using the opponent's attack stat against them. So really, this is actually a pretty decent Pokemon as well. It's a little bit more challenging to use on an in-game team, but it would be very beneficial if you're willing to put up the time to train this thing up later on in the game. And speaking of flying types that you get later on in the game, let's actually look at the 3 legendary Pokemon that was introduced here in Black and White. The first one being Tornadus. This is a pure flying type, actually the first ever pure flying type, which is actually very interesting. It is very fast at 111 speed, it hits really hard with 125 special attack, and you can also rely on a 115 attack. Plus, with its ability Defiant, if you're intimidated, it boosts its attack, so you can run a mix set if you want to. This thing is an amazing Pokemon, but since it is a legendary, you're not going to get it until way later in the game. And of course, it does have a Therian form, but since we're only looking at Black and White at this moment, we're only going to look at the incarnate forms of these 3. And in terms of legendary Pokemon, Thunderous is very similar to Tornadus. The only difference is this thing has an added electric typing, which in my opinion makes this one better than Tornadus. You have stab electric moves. This thing also has Defiant, so you can run a mix set. Its stats are exactly the same as its flying only brother. So this is a great Pokemon if you want to use this one as well. Of course, being a legendary, it's a later game Pokemon. And looking at Landris, the third of this trio, this is a ground flying type, which ground is an amazing typing. This thing also has great stats. 125 attack, you're going to hit things very hard. 115 special attack, you can rely on that as well. And with Sheer Force, you're going to get a boost on some of these moves such as Earth Power. 101 speed, you're still going to be able to outspeed things, even though it's not going to be as fast as its other 2 siblings. This is actually another great Pokemon, but being a legendary, it's going to be later in the game. You're not going to probably use this thing as an in-game team Pokemon. And there are the flying types of Black and White. Which one are you going to use on your team? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next Pokemon video.